Back in 1998, I was flying in a hot air balloon with my wife and kids when I thought it would be a good idea to throw a penny down below for good luck. However, 6 days later, I found out it hit a sleeping homeless man at such a high speed that it got stuck 70 centimeters up his ass and he required emergency surgery to remove it. Of course, I'm just kidding, I didn't have a wife back then, but unfortunately there are some pretty messed up confession posts on Reddit that are actually real. Foremost disturbing Reddit confession post by Chilling Scares.
On May 8th, 2025, a Reddit user asked a grim yet straightforward question on r/askreddit, stating, "What is the most messed up thing you have ever done?" Initially, replies to this were filled with either obvious jokes or relatively tame confessions involving relationship drama.
I hacked all the people who bullied me in middle school and they all started blaming each other. I have no regrets. What a great thing. What even is this? What was the original question? What's the most messed up thing you've ever done? Hacking people who bullied me in middle school. Damn, that'll teach him a lesson.
However, after about 30 minutes of the post being live, one user replied with a disturbing comment that stood out from the rest. It read, "I ran over a woman and her child in California in '96. I don't remember the specific city, but I'll never forget it was the intersection between Vanowen Street and Louis Avenue. I think the mom died, but I don't remember what happened to the kid. I got away scot-free, and I'm only telling this because the statute of limitations already passed."
Jesus Christ, 1996, so that was like how many years ago? Like 30 years ago? You think the mom died? Wait, what do you mean you think the mom died? Was this a hit and run? You hit them and then you just like ran away, didn't even check up on them? And what is the statute of limitation? Let me just search that up. It's the maximum amount of time after a crime is committed within which it can be prosecuted. Wait, so that means this guy can get away with it. But actually, I mean, he already got away with it, so he just had to wait for that timer to expire. Since when was that an actual thing? Surely you can get prosecuted like forever. Like, isn't that like an actual thing? Like, if you kill someone, surely give the detectives at least like more than 30 years to like try to be able to figure it out. But at the same time, maybe if the detectives couldn't figure it out within 30 years, then like, I don't know, like they're kind of useless anyways. And so like maybe you deserve to get away scot-free.
Now, it's not uncommon for people to just make up shocking stories on Reddit for attention. And at first this didn't look any different until another user did some digging and discovered an LA Times article from July of 1996 about what seemed like the same incident mentioned in the comment. That article, along with others from the time, not only confirmed the OP's claims, but also revealed the horrifying details of what actually happened that day. According to the reports, the victims of this incident were a 19-year-old girl named Ruby Moreno and her 1-year-old daughter. Ruby had taken her daughter to a nearby hospital on the morning of July 29 to treat a few minor cuts she got while playing. She stopped at a relative's house on Vanowen Street on her way back and was about to return home at around 10 p.m. But as she was attempting to get into her car on the driver's side, she heard a loud screeching noise from behind. She looked back and saw a car barreling towards her at 100 miles per hour.
100?
According to other witnesses, this car had swerved to avoid hitting a van just seconds earlier, causing it to lose control. Seeing this, Ruby panicked and started running from the speeding car with her daughter still in her arms. Unfortunately, luck wasn't on her side that day. Before she could reach the sidewalk, she tripped into the street and was struck by the car moments later. The impact sent her flying over a parked car and onto the roof of another. The baby was also tossed several feet into the air before falling on the asphalt.
But I mean, here's the thing about Reddit. So like the guy said, you know, people do make up stuff and everything. And the only reason why they believe this story is true because someone found an article. But like, couldn't someone have, you know, reverse engineered this? Like I could have found some random article from 1997, 1967, and then I could have just made up a story saying, oh, I hit someone in a car in 1967. And then, you know, I'm just like hoping that people find that random article. Cause like he specifically said the road and everything. Like, isn't that too much detail? Like, how would you remember the details of the specific intersection unless you did some pre-reading beforehand? You read this article and then you're pretending that you did it. And so now Chilling Scares has made this entire video, like a very serious video about your lie. I don't know, but like, it could be a lie, it could be true.
Miraculously, the baby didn't receive any lethal injuries and was able to survive without any lasting damage to her body. Ruby, however, wasn't as fortunate. She was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries the same night. As for the driver that hit her, witnesses reported him trying to flee the scene, hitting another parked car and then a curb before successfully getting away. And from everything I could find, the perpetrator was never identified or arrested. So, if this Reddit user was telling the truth, there's a real chance he was the driver behind the brutal hit and run nearly 3 decades ago.
Wait, but he didn't even bother to, like, change his username or, like, delete his account after posting this confession? So that sort of proves that maybe, like, he's sort of lying. I think he's actually lying, because why would you, intentionally incriminate yourself without deleting your thing? Although, yeah, the statute of limitation has passed.
The report from 1996 also mentioned that the driver was likely intoxicated due to the way he behaved after hitting Ruby. And when asked, the user admitted that this was the case.
I mean, you could have easily just, like, read that article beforehand and then, just act as if you were that person. Like, you're just getting into the mindset of the person. And so, of course, he's gonna say that he was drunk when someone asks him.
Were you drunk at the time, as the article says, or were they wrong about that? Inebriated, sure. More high than drunk. I was on a lot of junk back there. But the most disturbing part of his confession was just how cold and remorseless he seemed about the entire incident. Why no sympathy? Was this on purpose? No, but it's been so long. It's like a whisper of a memory.
This guy's trolling.
Do you think about how that child has to live without a mother now? Genuinely asking, you seem stone cold. It's been 30 years. That child probably has children of its own. I seem stone cold because I've already been through all the stages of emotions. I've justified myself, I rotted with guilt, I've had sleepless nights. I'm an old man now and I'm waiting to die any moment.
Wait, 30
I can't
years.
change what I did. I can't even pay for my crime anymore because California doesn't send people to prison only on a confession. And regardless, my health alone would render me incompetent to stand trial. There's nothing tying me back to that day but my word.
Wait, so this happened 30 years ago. So we just got to remember, 30 years ago. So that kid that was in, part of the accident probably does have their own children by now. I mean, at 30 years old, maybe. I mean, like some people don't even have kids at 30. So this guy says he's too old to go to jail, which means maybe he's like 80 or 90 years old. And so he would have hit the person when he was like 50 or 60 years old.
Which brings us to the big question, was the OP actually telling the truth?
Nope.
Unfortunately, the answer to this is a bit more complicated than it initially seems. For starters, his story does match an actual incident that happened back in 1996, right down to the exact intersection he mentioned in his confession.
Too much
He
detail.
also added several details that didn't seem made up, and even gave a reason for why he was finally willing to confess now, because the statute of limitations had long expired. That said, there also seems to be some potential inconsistencies.
Exactly.
Some reports claim the driver was with another passenger, and that they actually fled on foot. However, the OP not only didn't mention any passenger, but also claimed that he's still in the car. He even cited its damaged condition as the reason he became aware of the accident, writing, "What was your reaction to what happened? I was too hopped up on various types of to notice. It was only the day after when I saw the dried blood on my bumper."
What?
This could point to the possibility that the OP wasn't behind Ruby's accident at all. He maybe stumbled upon the 1996
Exactly.
article online, memorized key details like the year and the street name to make it seem real, and then fabricated the rest of the story as users pressed him with more questions. All just to get some attention on the internet.
Exactly. Bro, what an actual sad bloke. Like, this is probably the first time he's ever getting attention from, like, females and males. Like, either one of them. He just wants to be bombarded with questions because, like, he's this sort of like, oh my god, I accidentally hit a person and their child in 1996. Bro, I guarantee this person wasn't even born in 1996. I guarantee this guy is probably younger than 20 years old.
In May of 2012, a Reddit user asked others to share a secret which, if came out, could ruin their lives. And while this post received over 44,000 comments in total, one chilling confession stood out above the rest. About 9 hours after the original post went up, a user replied with a haunting story of his own, reading, "I accidentally killed 7 people.
Bro, I guarantee whatever he's about to say in this story is going to be completely false. How do you just accidentally kill 7 people? This sounds like one of my YouTube intros. It's just the most blatantly false thing to ever happen.
I put a rag into a new water heater exhaust to keep debris out and installed it in a rental. I get a call a week later. There's been an accident. I show up and there's a ton of EMS and police. They ask me where the gas shutoff is, and I go down to shut the gas off and see the end of the rag I forgot sticking out of the top of the heater. Ripped the rag out, shut the gas off, and headed upstairs, only to be told all the tenants were dead. I drink all day now and sleep. It's killing me from the inside every single day, but if I say anything, my family is ruined. We have a bunch of rental properties and we'd be shut down.
Bro, what do you mean a rag? Like, what? How? I don't understand how this could possibly kill someone. You put a rag into a new water heater to keep debris out. So, like, how could that do any like damage, right? You put a rag into a water heater to keep debris out, but won't that sort of keep them safe rather than kill them? Unless there was like something in that rag, like maybe it was, I don't know, like poo or like homemade special sauce, or maybe it was like ammonia or like some sort of like toxic gas or like some cleaning equipment or something.
This reply caught the attention of thousands of other users who wanted more details on what exactly happened. Unfortunately for them, the account that posted this was a throwaway, and the OP didn't post a single comment after that, possibly to avoid incriminating himself any further.
But you can still get caught.
When users didn't get the answers they were looking for from the OP, they began looking outward, and it didn't take long for someone to track down the news article talking about the tragic accident. According to these reports, the incident took place on December 16, 2006 in Kirksville, Missouri, where 7 victims, including 5 young adults and 2 children, passed away in their sleep due to carbon monoxide poisoning. However, while this part matched what the OP said in his comment, the conclusion the investigators reached was completely different. In his report, the police chief superheading the investigation stated that the heating system was functioning properly and was not the source of any problem. Instead, one of the victims' vans was left running in the closed garage. This generated a lot of carbon monoxide throughout the night, which slowly filled up the apartment and eventually ended up taking the resident's life.
Wait, so this guy was just completely lying? Wait, so like how could the rag possibly kill them with carbon monoxide? Or maybe it wasn't carbon monoxide. How does the rag have anything to do with this story? I find it very hard to understand what the rag, like the role of the rag is.
So, did the OP really get away with killing 7 innocent people because of his gross negligence? Sadly, the answer is not as clear-cut as many would hope.
What's a rag?
There are multiple possibilities, and any one of them could be true. For instance, if we assume that OP was telling the truth from his perspective, it's completely possible that the accident did have nothing to do with the heating system. But since the OP saw the rag stuck in the heater, he assumed it was his fault and has been blaming himself ever since. On the other hand, there's also a chance that everything unfolded exactly as the investigation concluded. OP just took this real accident and made up the story about him forgetting the rag for attention on Reddit. This would also explain why the police would let him casually walk into a potential crime scene without any supervision.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense as well, because how would he be able to, like, you know, go into there, remove the rag, remove the evidence without, like, all the police tape and all, like, the forensics being, like, all over the place, like, and marking everything? Because I'm pretty sure they would have had to mark, like, every little piece of evidence beforehand, and if he went into there, he would have to be, like, fully supervised so that he didn't tamper with any of the evidence. And so I think this guy's lying. Like, this guy's 100% lying, because I still don't understand what the role of the rag is. Like, what is the rag? How can a rag kill someone?
We could even take this a step further and assume that the OP wasn't even the landlord and just read about the incident online.
Exactly.
That all said, it's still completely possible this story is legit and that the rag was the cause of the deaths, or perhaps a combination of the van and the rag. The OP hasn't posted any new updates on his throwaway account in the last 13 years. So whatever the truth is, we may never know for sure.
Oh yeah, you know what? Here's my theory. I think this guy might have schizophrenia or something. He's just imagining that he was like the person that did this stuff. Like maybe he was the landlord and maybe like the actual cause of death was like the car being left in the garage, but this guy just keeps on blaming himself for something that he just didn't do. Like how can a rag kill 7 people? A simple rag, like that's a toweling, a piece of cloth. What even was on that rag that would kill people? And so I think the incident did occur and maybe he did have some part in it, but he didn't have anything to do with killing them and he's just blaming himself. He has schizophrenia or something.
On May 2nd, 2017, users on the Canada News subreddit came across a lengthy post titled, "Wanted for Kitchener Murder, My Side." This was a reference to a horrific murder that took place in Kitchener, Canada just a few days earlier. And to everyone's shock, this post was written by the prime suspect, Ager Hussein. He was still on the run but wanted to tell the internet what exactly happened on the night of the incident. However, what seemed like a desperate attempt to share his side of the story would later turn out to be a part of his plan to evade the consequences for his actions. Though the events that led up to this started 15 months earlier in February of 2016, when 21-year-old Ager Hussein met 21-year-old Melinda Vasilier in Kitchener. The two quickly became infatuated with one another and began dating just weeks after their first encounter. However, while things went quite well for the first year or so, the two eventually started bickering and fighting with each other. This resulted in the two breaking up in April 2017 via text, and that's when things took a turn for the worst.
I mean, breaking up through text is pretty bad, but does that really deserve being killed for that? Like, isn't it always like the ex-boyfriend that ends up killing the ex-girlfriend? Like, isn't that always like statistically, isn't it like they are most likely to be the person to kill the ex-girlfriend? And so that's why for all my female viewers out there, be extremely careful about your ex-boyfriends. Otherwise, like, you might find yourself in one of these videos.
Not long after their breakup, Adria attempted to break into Melinda's home through her patio, but was spotted by her friend Anna and her boyfriend. They also called the police on him, forcing him to leave Melinda alone. However, he kept texting her even after this incident, asking to meet her at least one last time. She eventually agreed and invited him to her home, hoping to talk things through and end the relationship on respectful terms. They decided to meet on the night of April 27th, but when the time came, Adria didn't show up. Melinda had asked her friend and sister to stay with her at home while Adria was visiting. However, since Adria was a no-show, she gave them the go-ahead to carry on with their night and the two left. They returned shortly after midnight, and to their surprise, discovered that Adria had shown up while they were gone and was now in Melinda's room with her. The girls confirmed Melinda's safety before heading off again to get food. This trip took barely 30 minutes. But by the time they came back, things had somehow spiraled into a complete nightmare. The apartment was in complete disarray and there was no sign of Adria anywhere. And as they stepped further into the apartment, they found Melinda lying face down on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood with her body covered in dozens of wounds.
Okay, so now how does this guy expect to talk himself out of this situation? Like, of course, he's the prime suspect. He was the only one there at the time where she was, like, murdered. And so his first thought is to go on Reddit to try explain his side of the story, why he didn't kill this person. Bro, I don't think any amount of explaining would be able to convince anyone that you didn't kill this person. I'm pretty sure this guy would have expected, like, the girlfriend to have, you know, people, like, her friends there with her. And so he intentionally came late so that the other people, her friends, would be gone by the time he came. That is actually some, like, creepy behavior.
They rushed in to check on her, but tragically, it was already too late. Melinda had no pulse. After composing themselves, they contacted the police and told them everything they knew, sparking a nationwide manhunt for Adria. However, despite days of searching, the investigators were unable to find anything about his current whereabouts. That is, until a post from Adria himself popped up on Reddit explaining everything that happened from his perspective. He opened his monologue by going over the history of his and Melinda's relationship, how they were perfect together, and that he was even planning on proposing to her before everything fell apart. After spending a bit more time going over the timeline of the relationship, he moved on to talking about the day of the incident. And according to him, this is what happened after Melinda's friend and sister checked up on them. We continued to talk and finally decided it was worth it to try one more time. Anna and her other friend left the house to grab food. We both let everything out and our relationship was back on track. As I'm getting ready to leave, she asked me if I had done anything with any other girls while we were on a break, or any time we were on a break. I told her we needed to be honest and said yes and told her about it. She started freaking out, wouldn't say a word, just kept slapping me with tears in her eyes. Slaps turned into hits. I told her I was sorry, but if she didn't stop, I'd do something back. She didn't stop. I then stupidly pushed her, harder than I expected. She fell against the sink. This was the first time I ever did something physically violent towards her. I told her I was sorry. She said, leave now. I began saying sorry even more and asked if I could get a hug. She was still crying. I go up to her to try and give her a hug. Almost out of nowhere, she grabs a knife by the sink.
What?
Initially, I thought she was just going to hold it to try and tell me to leave. She doesn't. She comes at me full force, aiming towards my face. I tell her to stop. She doesn't. I tried grabbing the knife but ended up cutting my hands. After a few cuts, I lost it. I freaked out. I was scared and in a state of shock. Never in 100 years did I think she would use a knife against me. Out of shock and fear, I grab one. I hit her with it, almost blindly, a few times.
Okay, I'm gonna have to pause here, bro. There is no way any of this actually happened. Because at first, my first thought was that maybe, like, this isn't even him on the account. Maybe someone is just trying to impersonate him just for some, like, you know, internet fame and clout and all that stuff. But then as we began to hear about the story, I realized, yeah, this is probably 100% him on this Reddit account, but he's just making up the most, like, cap story I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, he spent the past 3 days thinking about some sort of excuse story to sort of, like, fabricate, and he comes up with this out of all things. So he's gone down the self-defense route. He's decided to say that the girlfriend was physically attacking him. Slaps turns into hits, and then she grabbed a knife, but isn't she defending herself against you because you pushed her against the sink? And so now she is in the defensive, so she has to defend herself. But then you begin crying and ask for a hug, bro. What type of a dude are you? I can already imagine this guy. This guy's always that type of guy guy to ask for hugs whenever he sees girls. It's like, where's my hug? Where's my hug? Bro, shut up. You don't get a hug. And so you ask her for a hug. She doesn't say anything because she's crying. And so you go to hug her anyways. And, you know, like, understandably, from her perspective, it could seem like that you're trying to strangle her. Like, if you're going up for a hug without consent, that could be, you know, interpreted as an attack. And so she grabs a knife for self-defense. Okay, so even if this story was true, this is still, like, she's still trying to defend herself against you because you just pushed her into the sink before. Oh yeah, but let's just continue the story then. Let's continue whatever fabricated, made-up story this is.
I didn't know what happened. I was confused, shocked, and scared. I had no intentions of that happening.
Bro, what? You have no intentions of stabbing her? Yes, you literally grabbed a knife and hit her with it blindly a few times? What the frick did you expect to happen? Like, obviously, if you whip out a knife and start, like, tickling someone with it, like, of course they're gonna get cuts and then wounds. Did you think it was just gonna make, like, a little squeaky noise, like a little, like, a inflatable balloon? Like, do you think it was, like, some sort of, like inflatable rubber knife or something?
When I left, I honestly thought she just passed out. Then I looked at the blood and started freaking out and just ran.
What? So, okay, this is getting even more and more unbelievable. I cannot believe this guy really typed this out and thought people would believe him. So you had no intentions of stabbing her, even though you literally whipped out a knife and stabbed her. And then after you stabbed her, you thought she just passed out, and then you realized that she was dead. I mean, how does that make any sense? How can you stab someone and they just pass out when you literally, you know, made the knife go into her flesh? And so even if this story is true, okay, like, let's assume that this story is true, there is no way anyone is, you know, taking his side in this.
Then I looked at the blood and started freaking out and just ran. I didn't know for sure she had died until the next day. I honestly had no intention of ever doing that to her. I was protecting myself.
Bro, intentions...
From there, he went on to talk about the amount of regret and sadness he was feeling for what happened to Melinda. He also expressed his shock over the news, calling this a targeted attack. Now, on their own, these looks like the words of a man desperately trying to clear his name after an accident, when in reality, every word in this post was carefully selected by Ager to make himself look as innocent as possible. For instance, he claimed that Melinda often slapped and hit him near the beginning of his story, so that it doesn't seem suspicious when he mentions it later. When, according to people who knew her, Melinda was extremely sweet and had no violent tendencies. Ager also downplayed the break-in attempt, claiming he merely visited her house to talk.
Bro, visiting her house to talk by trying to break through the front door, the glass, trying to smash through it? Oh no, I'm just knocking on the door. Bro, meanwhile, he's like pounding on the window to try to break it. How is that the same as knocking on the door?
And even left out the part about Melinda getting a restraining order against him following that incident. He also mentioned that he swung his knife just a few times in self-defense. When in reality, autopsy results showed a staggering 47 different wounds on her body.
Bro, just a few times. 47 times you swung and made a connection. Okay, this guy, like, what even is this attempt? This is some sort of Hail Mary attempt at getting sympathy from the general public.
Luckily, by this point, the police knew that he crossed the border a few hours later and was now hiding in the US. And while it did take them a few weeks to pinpoint his location, they were eventually able to arrest and charge him with the murder of his once girlfriend. Further investigation also revealed other twisted methods he tried to seem more innocent, like sending a message to Melinda saying, "Nice seeing you tonight, glad we worked things out. Anyways, see you soon," hours after committing the crime. He stood trial on October 2023, where the jury concluded his motive boiled down to, "If I can't have you, no one can." He was given a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 16 years.
I mean, that's usually always the case with, like, the ex-boyfriend sort of murder type beat. Like, when it's like, if I can't have you, no one can. Like, that is literally the exact reason every single time this happens. But what sort of attempt was this? Like, what method is this? So texting her, like, hours after you murder her to make it seem like that she was still alive and that you had no idea that, like, she died? Oh my god, I didn't realize. I just texted her. Bro, this is, like, the most obvious, the most bait thing you could ever do. Like, do you think the police are, like, 3-year-olds?
On June 7, 2019, a throwaway account made a post on the Confessions subreddit claiming to be responsible for the deaths of several people. The post opened with the OP talking about his life goal 4 years ago, how he didn't get stuck in a 9-to-5 cycle. So he came up with a different business plan, selling substances.
Jeez, okay, what a great conclusion to come to. So if you don't want to do a 9-to-5 job, just become a DRUG dealer. That is a great thing to do with your life. How do you even come up with this, bro? Just go get a job. Like, just get a 9-to-5 job or build a legitimate business selling actual legal stuff.
However, this really didn't work out as well as he'd hoped. He hated meeting people in person and was constantly afraid of someone finding out who he was and where he lived. But then he learned about a popular marketplace for illicit substances on the dark web and started using that to conduct business. Things were going well, and even upgraded from selling just 3 substances to shipping several much more potent options as well. Unfortunately, what started as a major boom for his business turned into a massive disaster when he accidentally sent the wrong items for a few orders, stating, "I put all my addresses into an Excel spreadsheet along with their name, zip code, order, along with the amount. At the time, I was selling some super white powdered The was also a white powder. Very similar consistency. Long story short, my Excel messed up or I messed up, and about 7 people's orders were filled in as orders. They all went out. I didn't notice and kept doing my thing for a few days.
No.
After about 5 days, someone contacted me and told me their friend died from my I immediately called BS and went to check my order log and scale up how much I had of my left. Well, I had about 11 grams more than I should have.
I mean, okay, so that is really bad. So that, I think that's how, what is it? Like, I think Juice WRLD and maybe Lil Peep or something. I think it was actually Lil Peep, I think. So I think that's how Lil Peep died, because his DRUG dealer gave him the wrong thing, or maybe gave him like a deadly combination. So that's why if you are a consumer, you have to 100% fully trust that, like, you know, your plug is giving you the right stuff. But also, in the first place, you shouldn't really be, you know, consuming any of this stuff, because if these people hadn't have made an order in the first place, then they wouldn't be dead.
I still don't know how it could have happened. I wasn't a user, but I definitely was high. Put simply, the OP accidentally sent a much harder substance to his customers. And while I can't mention its name on YouTube, it is known to be extremely lethal in even relatively small quantities. He later searched the names of these customers online and discovered that at least 5 of them had passed away due to his mistake. The sheer gravity of his actions prompted him to immediately abandon the drug trade and rebuild his life, stating, "I immediately deactivated my vendor account. I didn't even need confirmation. I knew what happened. I knew I just killed several people. I sold the rest of my drugs, converted my Bitcoin to cash, and moved away. Didn't speak to anyone for weeks. Found a job in a restaurant, living in a city I always wanted to. I haven't touched drugs since that day. I haven't had anything to do with that life since then."
And that sounds like a very good idea. Honestly, this is the best idea this guy has had in this entire segment. So I assume what the dealer means by, like, you know, when he said, "I searched up the names and realized that they died," I assume what you can do is you can literally search up the names of your customer on the Google and find a random news article saying that that person died from an overdose. So that would have been a pretty messed up way to find out one of your customers has died, but at the same time, you shouldn't even be in this situation selling it. Like, just go get a job. Just go get a job at McDonald's. Go flip some burgers.
However, the OP ended the post by claiming that, despite getting as far away from his old life as he possibly could, the guilt of being responsible for so many lost lives still weighs heavily on him, and that the only reason he confessed everything on Reddit was to finally get it off his chest, hoping it might bring him some sense of relief.
But instead of getting relief, the next day, 20 FBI agents broke into his house, raided everything, got his hard drive, got all the DRUG, and he got sent to prison for the rest of his life.
Now, whether this actually helped him feel any better or not is completely unknown. This was his first and last post from this account, and he hasn't posted any updates since. As for if he was actually telling the truth, that much is uncertain. It's near impossible for me to track down any news articles about his unfortunate customers, given that over 100,000 people every year lose their lives from that same substance. That said, many users in the comments believe the story was genuine, and some even express sympathy for the OP's situation, though I doubt we'll get any concrete answer on this confession's legitimacy anytime soon.
I mean, honestly, there is, like, the chance that this was completely made up as well. Like, maybe we're just taking things too seriously. Maybe he, you know, intentionally just made that account and did one post just so he could get some internet fame, because where is the proof? But at the same time, yeah, maybe it's a bit hard to prove stuff without incriminating himself, because I guess one of the best ways he could potentially prove it was real would be to, I don't know, like, leak one of the names of the customers who died. But at the same time, even if you do leak the name, that doesn't really necessarily prove that you were the one that, you know, like, sold him the stuff. So he started as being too lazy to get a job, and it only took killing several people to, you know, get him to lock back in and, like, get an actual 9-to-5 job.